Okay, so welcome my friends to our Share and Torah Anytime. We're up to Perek Chav Daled, the last Perek from Shmuel Beis. It's very exciting. We started this year after Sukkot, and Baruch Hashem we're up to here. So, this is the fourth Perek, which is, as we discussed, like an addendum or an appendix to the last of the Shmuel Aleph Shmuel Beis. And this Perek is going back to an earlier story, which goes back to according to Chazal, David HaMelech brought back the Aron. If you remember early on in Shmuel Aleph, there was a whole story with the Aron, how the Aron was in exile. And there was that whole story then of the Tchoirei Zahav, of the golden hemorrhoids, and we had the whole story until the Aron came back onto its proper place. Chazal say that even though the Aron was brought back, there was David HaMelech did a sin. He sinned by not buying off the property of Har HaBayis. Big problem. So just to keep that in the background, Har HaBayis at this point in time was owned by a goy. His name was Aravna HaYevusi. Har HaBayis was owned by a goy. And even though David HaMelech was told that he can't be the king, and that his son Shlomo HaMelech would be the king, he still should have seen to it that the property was owned by Jews, that it should have been prepared. Now I don't know if it was David HaMelech himself, or it was the Jewish people should have seen to it, I'm not clear, but definitely the Har HaBayis should have been in Jewish hands. That's the backdrop of, according to Chazal, that puts into context the whole story. So, Vayosef af Hashem lachrois b'Yisrael. Perek Chav Daled. So God increased the charoin af. He was upset at the Jewish people. Besides for the cast that he had in the hungry years, which was in Perek Chav Aleph, Vayoses es David bohem leimoid. So the Satan implanted a thought in David HaMelech's mind, leimoid, Lech menei es Yisrael ve'es Yehuda. Make a census and count the people of Yisrael and Yehuda. And everybody knows that it says in the Torah that you're only allowed to count the people, make a census letzorich, if there's a need for it. And that we know in Chazal, we know in the Torah that everybody gave a kofer nefesh. You used to count with a machzah shekel. There was a system of how people were counted. It says in the pasuk in Shemot, there shouldn't be a negef. There shouldn't be a plague when they're counted. So David HaMelech obviously thought that it's not an issue. Vayosas as David b'em leimer leich minei es Yisrael v'es Yehuda vayomer HaMelech al Yoav sar achayil asher itay. David HaMelech tells his general Yoav, Shoitno b'chol shiftei Yisrael, go out, and all of the tribes of Klal Yisrael, midon v'ad Beersheva ifkdu es ha'am, count the people v'yadati es misperam. I should know the census of the people, I should know the number. Vayomer Yoav al HaMelech, and Yoav tells the king, why would you want to count them? V'yosef Hashem alekecho el ha'amcho heim. God is going to increase the number of the Jewish people double, v'chohem meya pa'omim, 100 times fold. And you'll see that the blessing will happen. Why would you want such a thing? That means Yoav knew that it's not wise to count people. And Yoav tells him, why do you want to do it? Don't do it. And the David HaMelech insisted. And he says, hey, I'm the king, I'm the boss around here. You're just a general. Go out. Do what I told you. They go out against their will to count the Jewish people. So basically, David HaMelech, or the Jewish people, sinned that they didn't own Har HaBayis. And because of that, one sin beget another sin. Just like mitzvah gereres mitzvah, one sin begets another sin, and that's how he has this thought implant in his mind to do something which is wrong. Asher Besoicha Nachal Hagad, and it's counting out all of the locations they went. And if you have a map, you can see like they went all around all of the locations. Vel Yazer, they went to Yazer. Vayavoyu Hagilado, they came to Gilad. And it's Tachtim Chodshi, they came to a new yeshiv. Vayavoyu Dono, they came to the Shevet of Don, which was called Ya'an. Visaviv El Tzidon, and then they went around to next location on the map, Tzidon. Vayavoyu Miftzar Tzoir, they come to the Bnei Asher, and they had like a Miftzar, like a fortress on Tzur, Cholore Achivi V'Aknani, and they even went over to the Achivi and the Knani, Vayetzu El Negev Yehuda, they went to the south of Yehuda, Beersheva, V'Yashutu B'Chol Haaretz, they went over the entire land, V'Yavoyu Miktzei Sisha Chadoshim V'Esrim Yoim Yerushalayim, they came back to Jerusalem. He gives back the number, the count, the census to David HaMelech. And they told him, there's 800,000 warriors. Well, he was trying to avoid, Yoav was trying to avoid to go into the detailed numbers of every person, because he knew that it's just not wise to do it, and that's not the way how you count, so he only gave him like the general number of 800,000 warriors, which means, and their families. And the people of Yehuda had 500,000 people, and once the census was done and he knew the number, David HaMelech realized he did something majorly wrong. Vayach leiv David, and the heart of David pained him. Achrechen, he was afraid. Safar Sa'am, that he counted the people. Vayomer David al Hashem. And David, this is always one of David HaMelech characteristics, is that he always mans up and he takes responsibility. We had in all the stories of David HaMelech, and he says, Chatasi mo'oid asher asisi, I sinned big time.
But why did he get that beforehand? I mean, they were telling him, no. Then what was that? Clicked in, or what does that mean?
Right. So, because there was another sin out there that had to be rectified.
What?
The sin of Arav Naivusi. There's different pirush in what the sin was, what exactly the sin was. But I'm going on the pshat of Chazal that it was Arav Naivusi. This was the sin, because it puts into the whole story in context. That sometimes you have to fix something. You screw up something in life, you have to fix it. The only way it gets fixed is if you brought to another sin. And that other sin is going to lead you to rectify the first sin. That's the story over here. You'll see the storyline. It's a fascinating story that a lot of times in life, you wonder, hey, it's not fair. Why, like if he did sin A, so then why didn't he get punished for sin A? What's the punishment of a sin? If you did something wrong, you should get a punishment. If I sinned, why is the punishment that I get to do another sin? The answer is because the second sin, and you'll see what happened because of the second sin, led him back on the path to fix the first sin. So the punishment is not the point. The point is that whatever you did wrong originally should get fixed.
But I got fixed the second thing.
Correct. Come along and you'll see. Ve'ata Hashem please remove the sin of your servant. I did a shtos. I did something foolish. Vayakom David baboiker. So David wakes up in the morning. Dvar Hashem hoyol God hanavi. So David HaMelech's personal navi is God. So God hanavi is choize David. Lemoy, God is there. The navi God is there, and he has a message from Hashem for him. And he says, Holach v'dibart el David. Go and tell David. Koi Omar Hashem. So said Hashem, Sholosh anochi noited elecha. I'm giving you 3 different consequences. B'char lecha achas mehem, choose one of them. V'as lecha. You can choose. You can choose a consequence. Vayove God al David. Vayaged loy. And God came to David and he told him that he has a choice. Vayom loy, 1. Would you rather have 7 years of famine instead of a plague? Or would you rather to be on the run for 3 months from your enemies? Or Or do you want 3 days of a dever, of a magefa, of a plague to come down? Tell me which one you choose. Choose one of them. Now, I found this very fascinating because I don't know exactly what the problem of counting, of making a census is, and this is not like a minig, and it's not like a superstition. This is something that it actually says in the Torah not to count, and it seems very interesting because it seems almost superstitious, like, I did count, I didn't count, like, what's the big deal? So, I know that Chazal say, Chazal say that you only have blessing in something which is hidden from the eye. It almost seems like once your eye is shoylet on something and it almost like quantifies it, then it turns into something that, let me say it in different terms. Like everyone says, the famous riddle that a forest that falls in the forest, you hear it sound. A tree that falls in the forest, does it make a sound? What's the question? The question only exists because you don't know. If you're there in the forest, then obviously it makes a sound because you're there and there's rules to the universe of how it works. But when you're in a space where there's no human consciousness involved, you don't know. It could be that trees fall in the forest without making sounds. That's Eina Bracha Tolel B'Davar. So I remember Rav Bik, all of a sudden, Rav Moshe Bik, father told me, and Moshe Bik told him that when he lived in Mezhebish, they used to have a sack of flour in their house. I actually saw the house, you could see the house where they lived, where the Moshe Bik, Reb Chaim Bik lived in Mezhebish, but the point is they had a sack of flour. And whenever they needed flour, the mother or the father used to send them down to bring up flour, the kids. And they used to bring it up, and one time, when I think Reb Moshe Bik was a child, he told his father that, how could it be that so much flour comes out of this sack? And his father says, no! And it was too late, the sack was empty. Or everybody knows that Shai B'Reb Moshe, everybody knows that he got from his Rebbe, from Mendel Rimenovit, he got once a handkerchief with money that his Rebbe, Mendel Meshuris, gave him a handkerchief filled with money. And Pshaila said that he was smart. He never ever opened up the handkerchief with money. Whenever he had money, he put it into that handkerchief. Whenever he needed money, he took out of the handkerchief. So, I don't know what I don't know. But I do know that it's something that has to do with the beyond. It has something that has to do with, once human consciousness comes in, you limited it. You made it into Moedik, into Mugdar. And Klal Yisrael is something which is, in all the Psukim, it says, Kichoy Layom. I'm sorry? Asher lo yisofer. It's beyond counting. It's beyond. What's the lashon? Kafar haaretz. Asher lo yisofer miroiv. The second you counted, then you limited it.
Yeah, but then Hashem tells Avraham Avinu to go out and count the stars, and Kol Yezeracha.
Kol Yezeracha means it's uncountable. When he says, if you can count it, you can't. Just like you can't count the stars, so too you won't be able to count. And you say, what do you mean you can't count? The Jews are 0.004 of the world population. Why can't you count them? Jews were always a minority. Jews never even reached 1% percentile of the world population. Can't tell you back in the times of the land of Israel, but in recent history, Jews now are 1/4% of the world population. That's including all Jews, anybody who identifies as a Jew. If you go into Orthodox Jews, you get like 10% of that. So you're talking about 0.00 something of the world. So what do you mean they're not uncountable? So obviously it's not about, there's obviously much more qualitative than the quantitative part, which is uncountable. Regardless, I don't know, I can't tell you, I'm just telling you but now come along on what David HaMelech chose and you'll see the connection of the tikkun. Come along. So David told God, "Tzadli ma'od." It says sadly, it constrains me, it pains me. Niflul no b'yad Hashem, ki rabim rachmav. He says, I'm going to choose the thing which is b'yad Hashem. So you hear? He says the choice of choosing that there should be a famine. People have the food. People are going to have the oitzeres. They're going to have the storehouses first full of food. And I'm going to be totally b'yad Adam. I'm going to be dependent on humans. The choice of having people run after me, I'm again dependent on people. I'm going to choose the choice which is b'yad Hashem. Because a plague is totally b'yad Hashem. Ki rabim rachmov. Ubiyad adam el hapoila. I don't want to fall into the hands of man. So he chose to be b'yad Hashem. Why? Because the chet was that he put man under the eye of man and to the conscience of man, and he gave them a number. He quantified them. So when he came to the consequence, he said, I'm going to choose the consequence, which is b'yad Hashem, which is the polar opposite of the chet that he did. Vayitna Hashem David b'Yisrael. So God gives him the consequence, and there comes down a plague. From the time when they brought Shchitas Korban Tamid until the time when you spritz the blood on the Mizbeach. Vayomos min Omi Don v'ad Be'eshav 70,000 ish. 70,000 people. Vayishlach Yodai HaMalach. So now come along. When the Malach, or this Malach HaMashchis, was coming to Yerushalayim l'Shachasa, came to the borders of Jerusalem, Vayinochem Hashem el hara. Vayomer l'Malach HaMashchis ba'am, and he told this Malach HaMashchis, this angel of destruction, Ravata, enough. Heref yodecha, pull back your hand. Umalach Hashem hoyo im goyren. The Malach Hashem came then to the space where there was the goyren, where was the harvest of Aravna Hayavusi. He was like a Tsar, he was like a shtickle king, this Aravna Hayavusi, and he was the one who owned the property of Harabayas. So here's the lead up of how the second sin is bringing him back to fix the original sin that Harabayas was in the Jewish hands. So Vayomer David el Hashem he sees the angel of death about to strike Yerushalayim. Vayomer, and he tells him, I'm the one who sinned. And what did Klal Yisrael do? What did these shefelach, what did these sheep do wrong? Let the plague come upon me and my family. Why are they guilty? I'm guilty. And suddenly God Hanavi comes going on the scene. God el David b'yamahu, and the prophet comes on the scene to David v'yomeloi alei, go on to Haramedia. Hakem l'Hashem mizbeach b'goyren arav na'ivusi. Go bring a mizbeach, a place of sacrifice, and the Goyren of Aravna Yevusi. Go up on Harabayas. Alei means go up, ascend. Why is ascend? Because Harabayas is the highest space in Yerushalayim. He says go up and ascend and bring the carbon over there. Now don't forget that David HaMelech was the one who was told he's not allowed to build a Beis HaMikdash on Harabayas because his hands he was Ishdomim, because there was a lot of bloodshed on his hand, and he's not allowed to build a Beis HaMikdash, which is going to be Ki Beisi L'chol Amim, yeah? Ki Beisi Beis Tefillah L'chol Amim. It's a house of peace for all the nations. V'yal David kedvar God kashativ Hashem. V'yashkef Aravno. And Aravno was hiding out. He was hiding because of the plague. He bows down to the king. He has bittul to the king. Why did the king come to a servant? You could have called me, I would have came. I came to buy from you the goyren, I came to buy from you the threshing field, to build on it an altar for God, to stop the plague. David, Yikach, take it, and bring on it whatever is good for you, whatever I own. See my cattle, take my cattle, and my tools that I use, my wooden tools. Take my clay abakar, take all of my tools and use it for wood. Use it in order to bring your sacrifices. Hakel nasan ravna hamelech lamelech. It means Ravna Melech, he's a shtickle melech, he's like a sar, and he says, I'm donating everything for you. Do it. And here's the king. Here's the key Rabbi Sava. He says, he blesses him. He says, Hashem should accept your karbonos, accept your sacrifices, and the Magefa should stop. The plague should stop. Don't want to take anything from you for free. I want to pay full price. This is a big key in life. And whenever you want something to work, pay for it. Somebody offers you like a free course, say, no, I want to pay for it. Somebody says, you want to go for therapy? Somebody says, okay, he's your best friend, he'll give you therapy for free? No, pay for it. No, not because you want him to make parnasa, because the only way, at least in the Western world, the only way anything really clicks, unfortunately, is if you pay for it. You have to pay somehow. I don't know if you always have to pay with money, but you always have to pay with avodah. Unfortunately, in our, in our world, we have to pay with money, but you have to pay. Anything that you want should stick, you got to pay for it. So he says, no, I don't want it, I want to pay. I'm going to buy it from you for a price. I'm not going to bring any free sacrifices. No free sacrifices. If you want something to work, pay for it. I always say that, I'm just going off on a tangent over here, that people today have many alternative spiritual experiences available. You can take any type of plants and all different types of stuff, and you can have free spiritual experiences. The problem is you didn't pay. You got to pay. Not that you got to pay money for the plants. You got to pay with avodah. There's a reason why the world is set up. If you want something to last and you want it to be real, David HaMelech says, "Loi ki kanu ekne me oisro b'mechir v'lo yara l'Hashem." I won't go up to Hashem. Elikei oilos chinam. I don't go up for free. I pay to go up. I pay to have a high. No high goes unpunished unless you pay for it. Vayiken David es hagoyren ve'es habokol b'chesef shkolem chamishem. He buys it, and this was the first time that Harabais was bought. It's Gewalt. Vayiven shem David mizbeach l'Hashem. I don't know. Probably politically, this has a lot of ramifications if you want to delve into it. But the question is, why couldn't he go to battle? Why couldn't he conquer it? Everything else in Yerushalayim was conquered by battle. Why couldn't David HaMelech go and conquer Harabais? And the answer is because the same reason why he couldn't build a Mizbeach was because you can't have a Mizbeach built on blood. Harabais couldn't either have been built on blood, and it had to be bought peacefully, and it has to be owned through peaceful manners in order that all the nations of the world should be able to connect Hashem over there too. Even Sham David Mizbeach Hashem, he built there the altar, Vayal Oilus Shlamam, on his paid altar. Vayaser Hashem la'aretz, and David accepted the tefillas. Vate'atzer amagefam al Yisrael. Chazak, chazak. This is how Perek Chavdal finishes, and just the message of the final Perek of Shmuel Beis. This is what I took out of it, is that when one sin begets another sin, it's in order to bring you back to the original tikkun. And number two, no high goes unpunished. You don't want to go up to Hashem unless you pay for it. Those are the two final messages of the whole Sefer Shmuel Beis.
I just have a